It's been a minute. Welcome back to another episode of Becoming a Techno Wizard. And today we are continuing our series on my newsletter, A New Story of Humanity. Why hierarchies at the roots of all evil, essentially. So sorry it's been a while. I'm gonna have to figure out a new schedule because I got a car now, so I can get to work, and that means I work, at the office, 2 or 3 days of the week, and other days I might be, running errands and picking people up. So I don't know. Got to figure out what else I'm gonna do. So maybe probably lunchtime, I might do, these videos. I don't know. Well, we'll see how far we can get today. I want to do two um sections because these next two sections are essentially the same, like part of the same kind of idea. But we'll see how far we get. All right. So without further ado, let's begin. A thought experiment on societal collapse. Real quick, last week we talked about how hierarchies, virus, and technology is not neutral. And today we're going to get into societal collapse and hierarchy. So also consider this. If our society collapses today, if we truly do face some existential apocalypse, it is highly likely that all evidence of our technological progress will be ground to dust in a mere few thousand years, perhaps 5 or 10,000. But even if it takes 100,000 years for all evidence of our existence to be wiped away, it still is nothing in the grand scheme of things. That's nothing. Once again, we Homo sapiens have seem to have existed for 300,000 years, beings with a very similar level of intelligence as us today. Even before then, other hominids have existed for over 1 million years. That is an unimaginably long time for us to truly internalize in our minds that can barely grasp the length of a few decades. We like, oh, 10 years, 20, 100 years? That's so long. Try 100,000, try a million, try a billion. All right. Like it's really ridiculous when you think about this. And remember, like the Neanderthals, who were also existing around the same time, a little bit before us, as well, 400, maybe 500,000 years. They had a similar level of intelligence. Like some people think they might have been more intelligent than us in different ways. All right. And yes, I mean intelligence as we know it today. People forget that just because we have computers and all this technology, this advanced technology, doesn't mean that we're smarter. It just means that we had more time to build on top of all the knowledge that we've had, right? And many people, today, love to say that we're probably going down in terms of intelligence on a mass scale due to our over reliance on technology to do our thinking for us, right? So there's pros and cons to using technology. It's not all progress, right? We have to really be critical. Once again, it's kind of like my thing now. Like be critical about what the hell we're talking about. Anyways, it is possible. I'm not sure how likely, but it is certainly at least probable that other technologically advanced societies have risen and fallen in this time on Earth. Most people won't even entertain such an idea. And that is exactly my point. You can't even imagine the idea that advanced societies have risen and fallen throughout human history or geological history. And if you can't imagine humans or other creatures ever amounted to anything remarkable in all this time due to the lack of evidence, then what happens when our society inevitably collapses if this current trajectory, holds true? Really think about that. Like seriously, take some time to think about it if you have to. And this is not my idea. Like other people have had this idea. I'm not trying to be, self-aggrandized. No, other people have this idea, and I just really like it. So I repeated that here. I don't remember who came up with it. I don't know who came up with it, but it's an idea I think more people should consider. So really think about that. Anyways, what value should technological advancements hold if it comes at the cost of our present-day freedoms, equality, and potential? What does it matter that we have capitalism to thank for our current level of quote unquote wealth if none of that wealth means a hot shit in the time that it takes for a mountain to move? Yeah, I kind of like how I said that there. But yeah, really think about this. Like all the technology that we have, right? We develop and all this other stuff. it will all go like be ground to dust in the time it takes for the Himalayas to move, from one part of the earth to another due to tectonic plates. It takes like millions, if not billions, of years for a mountain range to move, and they do move like continents move, right? But in that time, our entire civilization can go and like come and go like a mayfly almost. Like you have to think about these things in terms of a cosmic scale, and that's just a Earth scale, a geological scale. Think about a cosmic scale where our entire planet can be gone, and it will be gone in the next what 2 billion years, a billion years when the sun, we might even have just 900 million years. I say just, but that's longer than there has been life on Earth or complicated life on Earth. So like you had to think about these scales when we're really talking about how great we are. What does it matter that we have zettabytes of data churning out trillions of dollars if all of that can be gone with the rising of the tides or the impact of an asteroid or the eruption of volcanoes? What does all this tech and wealth matter if it comes at the cost of our conscience? What is the value of this wealth that is based on taking out unpayable loans from our own futures, from our own children, our own, descendants? Even if you don't believe in evolution, you probably won't be reading up to here, but even so, one must admit that there is probably no place in heaven or any other afterlife for those that justify the exploitation of other life, right? I mean, I would think so. Can you truly imagine a heaven in which those who sat by and allowed or otherwise were even complicit in the domination of other people are not punished for such depravity? Think about that. Like all you American Christians who want to say, "Oh yeah, we're so good," but you're literally destroying other people, right? You're killing them. You're genociding entire civilizations, right? The Mbuti people. These people are being enslaved on a daily, right? Due to the not just the capitalist machinations, but also the religious machinations, right? These quote unquote evangelists want to go over there and talk about their faith and then end up killing a bunch of people because they say, oh, they're witchcraft or they're demons, but they're just people who believe in something different. So really think about that. I am not a primitivist, but I do admire the fact that low tech civilizations have been able to exist for far longer than many of us today can ever imagine our businesses and capitalist empires flourishing. The Mbuti have maintained their way of life for at least 1,000 years, even through genocide, slave trades, deforestation, and more. Same for the Khoisan, the Blackfoot, the Aboriginal Australians, and so on. Regardless of how you feel about quote unquote progress, there is something to be said for sustainability and stability. For peoples who can somehow maintain or adapt their society to outlast the rise and fall of hundreds of empires and cataclysms. Hierarchies are a disease upon the human consciousness. At any forms they take capitalism, patriarchy, nationalism, organized religion, nuclear families, state socialism, majority democracy, etc. all are just manifestations of this same problem, variants of the same deadly virus, one that consumes the virility of our minds and bodies, infects the social bonds that were our evolutionary advantage, and corrupts the imagination that was the tip of the evolutionary spear. If we ever if ever we are to create technology that truly allows us to go to the stars, it won't be built off the back of exploitation. It's just not sustainable. Our quickly changing climate, extinction of life since the last great mass extinction event, and destruction of the human spirit is a result of our technological progress. Is that all we can do? I believe technology can be far, far better. Whether it's slower or faster, our technological developments can and should be geared towards uh, can and should be geared more towards unlocking human potential of all humans instead of empowering a few at the cost of the many. Because here's the thing, even the billionaires amongst us, even the inventors and engineers and designers who can express their potential through our current level of technology, even they are kneecapping their own potential by taking out loans on the rest of us, right? People probably might point out like Elon Musk and going to the stars, right? Remember, like with his rockets, the idea of going to Mars, right, is going to take hundreds of years for us to be able to colonize Mars. At least hundreds of years, right? And probably 1,000 years or more. So we have our entire society, right? Has only America has only been in existence for what 300, 400, years or so. So in order for us to go to Mars and create colonies and create countries, people that living on Mars on a regular, that's going to have to exist for longer than this country has existed, right? So if you think that how we do technology today is going to sustain us for 400 years in order to actually live, to actually be a multiplanetary species, you're out of your mind. Like most of us can't even imagine the U.S. of America existing for another 100 years. So how are we going to say, Elon Musk's plans to go to Mars is going to exist for 400, 500, 1,000 years? Like people really have to be realistic, right? And I say this as a person who wants to go to Mars. Like I do. Like if you tell me I can get a ticket and I can go start a colony, I'm down, right? But you have to be realistic. What you're building is a multi-generational thing that will take hundreds or thousands of years, right? So that means you have to have a sustainable way of doing it, right? The way we do technology today, capitalism today is not sustainable. Like just look around, like it doesn't make sense. So if we really want to have a be a multiplanetary species, we have to create a sustainable economy, a sustainable lifestyle, a sustainable society, a culture that can exist for thousands of years, right? Maybe even millions of years. I'm not sure if I get into this because I learned about this later, but there's a theory of called grabby aliens. The idea that the reason why we don't see other aliens out there right now is because we're early. It's not because there's no one out there or whatever. It's because we're early. The universe has only been here as far as we know it for 14 billion years, right? And the heat death of the universe that where we predict the universe will end is quadrillions and trillions of years from now. Like it's an astronomically long time, right? So our planet is pretty early in that like it only took we our planet existed what 4 billion years or so. So 10 billion years from from the start of the universe, and then the stars and the space itself had to cool down before planets could even form. So our planet is one of the first couple planets that were able, and I say couple where it really is a couple million or a couple billion, but that's still a very small amount in terms of the vast expanses of time, right? So when you think about the development of life on Earth, right? That took what 2 billion years, and then another billion years for complex life, and another couple 100 million years for you know um life to come out on the oceans and come out of the land, and then you know it took humans from other animals and to where we are today 2 million years. So like you have to really think about this from a long perspective, right? It's kind of ridiculous to think that number one, in the small span of time that we've even known that space has existed, like that we're gonna just find aliens out there. That's like walking down a highway or walking in a forest and expecting to see another human, even though you've just now entered a huge ass forest that's big, bigger than the continent itself. Like you only took 2 steps. It's gonna take a while for you to find somebody else, right? You're gonna have to be more patient, right? And so, as a society, as a species, we have to be patient. In order to do that, we have to be sustainable. We have to be stable. We have to be realistic about what the hell we're doing, man. It's just, let me continue because I'm on a roll now. Hierarchies always collapse. Here's the kicker. I mentioned before that capitalism is fundamentally unsustainable and cancerous. But remember, it's just a manifestation of hierarchies of power. These hierarchies are always going to collapse because, once again, the only thing we can count on in life is change. Something happens that inevitably shakes the environment, causing everything to come tumbling down and life to have to adjust. Throughout human history, societies built on hierarchical power inevitably collapsed, usually quite violently. The Babylonians, the Sumerians, the Incan, the Aztecs, the Egyptians, the Zimbabweans, the Romans, the Greeks, the Chinese, the Indian, the British, the French, and so soon the Americans, and probably every other hierarchical society you can think of. Because people who are being oppressed inevitably rise up to overthrow that oppression. I mean, duh, right? And the people who want more power inevitably overthrow those who already have that power. So it's a fight on two ends, right? Where the people at the bottom are fighting the people at the top, and the people at the top are fighting each other. So it's like, it's that's normal. It's common sense that this stuff is going to fall apart. If that sounds too simple, it's not. Life is fairly simple. What's complex are the ways in which this plays out, right? The complexity emerges from very simple rules, i.e., patterns, interacting together. Hierarchy brings with it a number of very simple problems that weave together to form what feels like some impossibly complex web of intractable issues. But viewing it that way just serves the propaganda of such a system. Believing said system is too big to fight, or inherent in the human condition, or a necessary part of progress is what makes hierarchy so powerful, is that you buy into it. You no longer fight it, right? All of that propaganda is bullshit. Excuse my language. And realizing this grants us the power to take some of that power back and to begin the work of recreating a better society for all. Let me spell it out for you. A hierarchy of power is built upon and encourages the following simple issues: selfishness. Egalitarian societies require selflessness, or at least self interest aligned with the entire group. Altruism is a great strategy in a cooperative group because it will always come back as people remember your generosity. But the more power you gain, the more you are incentivized to keep it to yourself. Or otherwise, use generosity for your own gain, even at the expense of others, right? This is why the whole Jordan Peterson thing of wealthy people are more generous, or is very um it's not exactly untrue, but it's very manipulative, right? Because this is what wealthy people do. This is what psychopaths and or I should say, what's the term? Machiavellism, right? This is what they do. They use generosity for the purposes of only getting their own gain and not thinking about the others, right? They only think about the others in terms of how can they get the best out of this scenario, while altruism is thinking about, okay, yes, I'm going to benefit, but I want you to benefit too, right? Even if it doesn't come back to me, at all, I feel good because you feel good, right? And that's actually a really good strategy, because if you feel good, then you're gonna turn around and be like, I want you to feel good too, because you made me feel good, and I want you. So it goes back and forth like that, right? And it feels better, and a whole community, a whole society built on that, right? Means that everybody's legitimately, genuinely, deeply looking out for others, versus a society with everybody's Machiavellistic and selfish. People are only ever looking out for others in so much that it doesn't come back at them, or in so much as they can get more out of it, right? And so it doesn't feel as genuine. It doesn't feel as cooperative. Like many of us can say this today. How many of you trust your neighbors? How many of you will keep your doors unlocked, all your doors, and trust all your neighbors, right? Most of us will say no. And why is that? Right? Because we can't trust, because that's not the society that we develop. It's not because there's no human nature. There's environments. I'm sure some of us actually live in communities where we can trust to leave our doors unlocked, and we can trust to do all this stuff because we live in a community where we know everybody, we trust everybody. It's about a culture that we establish, right? Even to this day, even in our day and age, we can establish these cultures. So the idea that most of us, you know, don't feel that egalitarian altruistic community is a problem of our culture, not of ourselves, not of our human nature. Anyways, greed. Only a hierarchical society creates a space for greed to take root, and that means and the means to act upon it. Hoarding resources feels like a good idea, and a hierarchy where altruism is not a good strategy encourages greed instead. Right? So the idea of hoarding again is not necessarily a human nature thing. It's a thing about what strategy pays off. In an environment where you can hoard, nothing comes back. Like if you have no consequences for hoarding, then you're going to hoard, right? But in an altruistic one, where hoarding is like, hey, why are you doing that, man? Why don't you share? Like, and there's no, you either you get social, ostracization, or people actually be like, hey, why are you doing that? Or, you know, you feel out of place, or there's actual consequences for hoarding, then people don't hoard. Like it's adaptive. It's adapted to the environment in which you're in. That's what creates that culture. Another one, competition, specifically the worst type of competition, that of a finite zero sum game where there are winners and losers, and the winners deserve to rule over the losers. Hierarchies ratchet up the stakes of even a friendly competition and make kindness a weakness instead of a strength. Again, we see this in many, many cultures, right? Where egalitarian cultures did have competition, but it was cooperative competition, right? It was like a friendly thing where, okay, you did this, and I'm gonna see if I can one up you, and we're just buddies and stuff like that. Like it's like good sportsmanship, right? But what's bad sportsmanship is when I see you doing good and I try to sabotage you, right? I don't try to do the best by being the best I can. I try to sabotage you. I try to say, "Oh, you're cheating," or "I'm gonna get a ref to do this," or you find any reason to disqualify the other person, or to take them down just so that you can win, because it's about winning and losing rather than about enjoying the game, right? So competition is not about, like, there's no one type of competition. Competition is not just, this bad thing. It can also be a good thing, but you have to have a cooperative, shared environment within that. Corruption, bad, selfish, bad meaning selfish or unempathetic people inevitably rise to power, and even good, i.e., meaning altruistic and wise people, can easily misuse power if they think it's for the good of all. Hierarchy encourages ego. It makes it even it makes it so even the best of people think that their ideas are better than everyone else's. It makes us forget that the wisdom of the educated and participatory, I have to make that distinction, crowd will and always be wiser in the long run. Right. And there's actually been some studies on this that shows that crowdsourcing is almost always better than just a single scientist, kind of trying to study something or try to figure something out. There is wisdoms in the crowd, specifically if that crowd has the information available to them, right? If you have indoctrinated the crowd to believe a certain thing and they're only ever going to do that, then that's not the same. That's not really crowd wisdom. That's really just a hierarchical person, right? Or group of people mandating their beliefs, like dominating the crowd with their beliefs. So the crowd isn't really exploring all the different ideas. They're just, kind of constrained along like a sheep, like the common, idea of sheeple, right? You're just shepherding them along one path. You're not really allowing everybody to explore. So there's a difference between, a good crowd and a bad crowd. And finally, infighting, the coup de grace, if that's how you say it, I don't know. People without power want it back. People with power want it more. Thus, they fall due to internal pressures that merely compound with any external ones. And it's not that brief, so I end it there because we're already over 20 minutes. But yeah, that hierarchy is, like, I'm telling you, man, this I've said enough. Here I've said enough. Not gonna get more into it, but yeah. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you thought about this section, these sections, and stuff like that. We can have a discussion if you agree, disagree, whatever. And thanks again for watching and listening. Have a great day. See ya. Bye bye.